Good evening. I'm Scott Binsack, and this is Sunday Night with me. Tonight, I'm going to talk about denial and accountability. Two things I believe that go hand in hand. All of us are responsible for our own actions. No one else. And a lot of people live in denial. A lot of people. I know, I too, for a while in my life, lived in denial. It's very hard for one to admit the things that they do wrong, thus face themselves in the mirror. One of the hardest things. And we are thus accountable for our own actions. With the exception, of course, of if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time. God forbid somebody put a gun to your head and forced you to do something, different story. You're obviously not accountable for your actions. Or you are a child and you are forced to do some things. You're not accountable for your actions. Or you are accused of some things that you did not do just because you become the target. It happens in business every day. Coworkers accuse other coworkers of doing something. Relationships, one accuses the other of doing something. It's in life everywhere. When I was little, and I was about 5 years old, and I haven't shared this story with really anybody, but it has to do with someone being accountable for their actions. And every action has a reaction, of course. That's what people forget in life. Everything happens for a reason. And one action causes another action and another action, as do words that people say. And thus the effects thereof on the person. And it could affect them the rest of their lives. When I was about 5, my parents had been in their divorce, and at that time there was really no place for me. And I happened to be staying at my mother's house, my grandmother's house. And a family member who had abused me as a child happened to be there. And on this one night, the abuse got so bad that it was around, I believe it was 2, 3 a.m. in the morning, and I was in child's pajamas. I ran from the house to get away from this individual, from the abuse that had been going on for years. And people in the family kept living in denial about the abuses that had been taking place, not just with me, but with other members. God, did they live in denial. Even though the evidence was clearly on the wall. No one wanted to face that someone of their own blood could do such terrible actions. Even my own mother lived in denial. My father did not, but my mother did. So on this particular night, I ran away. It was in January. It was freezing cold outside. I had run out of the house, and I was hiding. I was trying to get away from this person. And I happened to hide in my grandmother's station wagon, parked in their multiple car garage. It was one of those old Ford Woody station wagons. And here I am with no coat, no gloves. I didn't even have anything on my feet. And I huddled in the back seat of this car, basically till 6 a.m. How I didn't freeze to death or end up with frostbite or other, I do not know. It had to be 10 degrees, 20 degrees, somewhere in there. But I hid there all night as this person even looked for me. And when I thought it was safe to come out, I did. But I huddled in this the back of this car all night long. And when it gets cold now, very cold, and I get into a car, I remember that night. And I even remember thinking at 5 years old, why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? Years later, and the reason why I brought up this story is because years later, I had proved what this particular individual had been doing to me for years. And when I presented the proof to the authorities, they believed, and they took the appropriate action at that time. But you have to understand, in the late 70s, 80s, child abuse was not a big deal. It was kept behind closed doors, and there wasn't much. And even today, with pedophilia and things like that, and other abuses, a lot of people get away with what I would call murder. And even with the evidence that was presented to family members, they still continued to live in denial, as did the person who did this. Denial, denial, denial. My mother, for years. Oh my God. That never happened. Not just this incident in the car, but the whole stream of it. And I had rock solid proof from the horse's mouth what had taken place. And I was amazed at how people live in denial, how they can't face it. Oh, this person could never do those kind of things, especially within families. Families are always like denying what the other one did, or this one's that, and there's always constant craziness within families. A lot of people don't like to show you that. It's the skeletons, you know. On the outside, the family looks so good and prominent and this and that, but on the inside, thus as is with all of us, I have a lot to be accountable for in my life. As do I know all of us have something to be accountable for. You have to take responsibility for your actions and your words in life. Because when you do, and you realize what you've done, and if you made a mistake or you did something, you then are learning a lesson. You are then becoming accountable not to somebody else, but yourself from within. No one's perfect. By far, no one's perfect, and no one's expected to be perfect. And if somebody's looking for perfect, you're never going to find it. But in our jobs, in our families, in our daily lives, we are responsible for every action that we do. Unless, of course, as I said, it has been forced upon you. People like to put blame on others. I did that because so-and-so did that to me. Hence why I was bringing up the story about child abuse. I know lots of people who go through life and say, well, I do this now because this happened to me then. No, not the case. You do things now because you're deciding to do those things. If you're smart enough to realize and state that you're doing something because something happened to you, then you have to have the courage to look in the mirror and say, I'm doing this now because I'm using that as a crutch and I'm still doing this. You have to take responsibility for your actions. And now I've now become, if I'm wrong, I'm going to tell you I'm wrong. If I made mistakes, I'm going to tell you I made the mistakes. I'm not going to live to say I didn't do that or I didn't do this. Unless I really didn't do it, then I will defend it. I'm a fighter. However, people must not blame others for their actions. You are responsible for your actions in everything that you do. Therefore, you're accountable for your actions. And if you continue to deny your actions or to live in denial, even from the smallest thing, you're just going to go in a circle, around and around and around. Everybody makes mistakes. Don't beat yourself up. Even if you've done something that's horrible, Okay, you pay the price and you move forward and you learn from it. Don't wallow in what has happened to you, or something that you've done, because it will eat you alive. It's like a huge release from you if you accept your responsibilities and not live in denial. And some things are better left unsaid as well. But within you is where you have to be accountable. You have to be accountable to yourself, as well as not just the people that you have hurt, them as well, or the person that you've hurt. This particular family member went years, legally got a slap on the wrist, and then it was brushed under the rug, as are many things in life today. And those little things, those big things that happen to people stay with them forever and thus affect their next action and their next move and so forth. It's the ripple effect. How you conduct yourself today and how you live will ripple all to everybody around you. It's like saying something horrible to somebody. You think it may not be horrible to them, but it could be horrible, and it affects them. Anything that you do affects something else. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you go to work mad and you do something at the job, or you treat somebody a certain way, it's going to affect their day, and so forth. If you scream at your kid for something and you're in a bad mood, it's going to affect that child and what that child does that day, and maybe even further. Or a coworker, or your spouse, or your girlfriend. And we all have bad days. Like I'm saying, it's not, what I'm saying is, make sure you own up to your actions. Don't live in denial. It's like substance abuse, it's the same thing. My mom was an alcoholic, and that was part of her denial for denying issues that happened to me as a child, because she felt guilty herself. And later on, she told me this in life, when things got better, that she felt like a bad mother, that she made decisions at the time that she thought were best. Again, every decision we make ripples along. And she told me, she said, I felt so guilty for what happened to you, I didn't want to face it. And you know, I said to her, I said, Mom, I forgive you. I love you. And for her just to say that to me helped herself more than it did me. But she became accountable, as I have over the years, for my actions. We all are held accountable for everything we do every day. Choose wisely what you say, what you do. And if you do make a mistake, like we all do, own up to it. Apologize for it, learn from it, and move on. But don't live in denial saying, they made me do that, you made me do that. Oh, I hear it all the time. Ugh. Relationships. I did this because you made me. Again, no one can make you do anything unless there's a gun pointed to your head, or by some other force. We all do everything daily because we choose to. No one is forcing us to do this. And this is the hardest thing for some to accept. I robbed that bank because I was on drugs. Okay, kid, you robbed the bank because you were on drugs. The drugs forced you to rob the bank? No. Your choice to rob the bank, maybe while under the influence of drugs, still your choice nonetheless, and your choice to do the drugs. I see that. Alcoholism, drugs, everything, people use it as an excuse. I had a bad childhood, that's why I've done this now. Or I had a bad, whatever. The excuses are endless. You do things, and I do things, because they're our decisions, not because anybody forced us to do them. And this is the reality people must accept. Now, the reaction to other people's actions are not forced, but they're there as a result. And that's when you have to identify with, why am I doing this behavior? Why am I doing this? Is it because I had a bad childhood? Or is it because I live in denial because of that? Or am I doing this because my parents were drunk? Or I was abused, physically abused as a child, and now I'm abusing my children, etc., etc., etc. You have to identify with what the problem is and thus be held accountable, but not use the original trauma or the original action as an excuse. Life's very simple. We all complicate it. That's the problem. It's very simple. I was abused as a child. I had issues as a result of that. And along the way, I was man enough to admit to myself, Scott, this is what the problem is. You are the problem. Must change A, B, C, and D. Why am I doing this? Why have I done this? But I had to mainly do it for me first. It all comes back to you. Everything in life comes back to you. And as I will remember what happened to me as a child, and subsequently thereafter, as my own result, my own mistakes, as well as my successes, many of them were a result of that. The strength, the survival skills. I'm still accountable, whether it's a good action or a bad action. It's funny, when you're doing good, the world wants to be on your coattails. But when something goes wrong, people scatter. Why? Most people see that you're now being held accountable. And they look and go, I want no part of that. No, no, no. I want no part of that. I'm going to stay over here in my little world, and I don't want to be a part of anything that someone's being held accountable for. I don't know that person. I didn't know that person. Da 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 da. It's simple. Man up. That means woman and man up. Be a real friend to people. Be a real friend to yourself. And if you have people in your life that live in denial, try to help them. And if not, get rid of them. Just get rid of them. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. Hence, I even tried my family for years. Look at this, because I was not the only person being abused in this family. Serious abuse. So it doesn't happen to anyone else, so it stops. No one wanted to pay attention. No one. So it just got pushed to the side. And the person was never held accountable. Maybe they were held accountable to themselves at one point. I don't know. I'll never know. But I've used that person's denial to build my acceptance. And I use other people's denial to build my acceptance, because I look at the situations. And I'm the type of person, I will fight for my life. my freedom, my life.
You use Tide Pod? Yeah.
And
That
now
little guy cleans, brightens,
there
and
is some
fights stains.
kind
So
of
now I can
ad
focus
coming
more
on my computer, and the volume is supposed to be off, and it's not. I apologize. This is like the third show I've done that on. So I love it. Do you ever seen those pop-up ads? They just poof, poof, they pop up all over your computer. I hate that. So I apologize. So in the end, as I'm slowly going to try and explain how you could take negative and turn it into positive, you'll be at peace forever. And there are traumas that affect us all, serious traumas. But the key is to not live in denial about them, including our own traumas that we've caused others. And I hear it. Well, and there was something on Facebook, somebody made a comment about a prior post on our show's wall. Well, I don't believe in that because da 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 da. If you're not looking in the mirror, you will not see that again, everything comes down to you. What you emanate from within, you attract, including that of deniability, and accountability. If you live in denial that you have a problem or you have an issue, say you're too trusting, then it's not the other person's fault that you're too trusting. It's your fault that you're too trusting. And you want to recognize that and fix it. And it's easy to fix these problems we have in our lives. All it takes, really, look in the mirror. Look at your past. Look at how you got to where you are today. And face the mistakes, face the great achievements, face it all. Face it all, take it, forgive. Don't live in deniability to yourself anymore, and move forward. Because we are all accountable. And I will own every decision I make. And I want other people to learn how to own their own decisions. It'll make you a much better person. Thanks for tuning in. Good night.